Hello, be sure to get through the story to the end and in the comments write your opinion, and subscribe to the channel, put a like. You ever walk into a moment so wrong, so out of place, that your brain just freezes? Like reality has to buffer. Like you're staring at something that doesn't fit into the life you thought was yours. That was me. Standing in the doorway of my own house, bag still slung over my shoulder, heart thudding louder than the silence that greeted me. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. My flight back was 2 days away. Conference schedule planned, packed, and shared like always. I'm one of those people who overcommunicate, not because I'm needy, but because I believe in transparency. Brooke always said she appreciated that. I'd sent her the itinerary the week before, even added the hotel address and emergency contacts. She knew exactly where I was supposed to be, down to the hour. It made her feel secure, she once told me. And honestly, I liked giving her that. Made me feel like I was doing something right. But that morning, I got a notification. The final day of the conference had been canceled. Weather issues, flight delays for the keynote speakers, half the sessions scrapped. Just like that, my schedule cracked open. And I thought, why not take it as a gift? Head home early. Surprise her. That thought alone warmed something in me. I imagined how she'd react. Maybe a surprised smile. That soft, sleepy laugh she gets when she's not expecting something good. Maybe I'd grab Thai food from that place she loved, light a few candles. Maybe it'd feel like something out of one of those indie romance movies she always made me watch. I could already see it. Me walking through the door with a bottle of her favorite wine, saying something stupid like, "Miss me already?" So I grabbed the wine at the airport. I even debated getting flowers, but I figured I didn't want to go overboard. Just enough to show I'd been thinking about her. Just enough to make her feel chosen. I pulled into the driveway right as the sun started dipping. The sky streaked in orange and soft pink. Her car was already there, tucked into the same spot she always used. For a second, I imagined she might be napping. Or reading. She did that a lot on weekends. Curled up on the couch with a blanket and some half-finished book she'd been meaning to finish for months. The house looked the same from the outside. Familiar. Comforting. Like nothing had changed. But the moment I stepped inside, the feeling twisted. No music. No candles. No sounds of life. Silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel natural. It wasn't peaceful or cozy. Felt held. Like the air itself was holding its breath. Waiting. I stood just inside the doorway, my shoes still on, keys still in hand. Something was off. I didn't know what yet, just that strange buzzing in my chest that something wasn't lining up. Her shoes were there by the door. The beige ones she wore when she wanted to look effortless. Her coat hung on the hook. My hoodie was still tossed over the banister from last week. All of it normal, but none of it felt right. I set the wine bottle on the small table by the wall, next to the ceramic dish we always tossed our keys into. Then I started walking, slow and cautious, like I was stepping into a place I wasn't supposed to be. Then I heard it. Laughter. Light, airy, playful. Not forced, not casual. The kind of laugh that comes when someone feels seen. And it wasn't just hers. A man's voice followed. Deeper. Confident. Easy. Then hers again, softer this time. Flirtatious in a way I hadn't heard in months. Maybe longer. A version of her voice that used to be reserved for me. My first thought, genuinely stupidly, was maybe she was watching something. A rom-com, a podcast. Maybe she had a friend over. I clung to that hope like a life raft. But I kept walking, toward the sound. My heart had started to race now, not from fear, but from something heavier. The kind of dread that starts in your gut and works its way up until your throat feels tight. I turned the corner slowly. I didn't want to startle her. I didn't want to assume. And then I saw it. The kitchen lights were on. She was sitting on the counter, barefoot, one leg tucked under the other, wine glass in hand. The wine wasn't the one I brought. Must have opened something else. She was laughing, really laughing, her whole face lit up in a way that used to be mine. Used to be because of me. And he was standing close. Too close. One arm braced on the counter beside her. His body angled like it belonged there. Like he'd stood in that spot 100 times before. They didn't notice me at first. He was saying something. She was already leaning into the next laugh. It wasn't until his eyes drifted past her and locked onto mine that the moment cracked open. His face dropped. Not completely, but enough. Enough to know he recognized the mistake. She turned, slow, like she could already feel the energy shift. Her eyes landed on mine. And in that instant, everything froze. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. I didn't give her time to scramble for words. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the spare key mine, and walked toward the counter. Each step felt heavier than the last. I placed the key next to her glass. The sound of it hitting the counter was louder than it should have been. Her hand was trembling. I could see it clearly now. The same hand that used to reach for mine in the middle of the night. "Jason," she said, barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I turned around and walked out. Not fast, not slow, just enough to feel the floor under my feet. I passed the hallway photos, the ones we took in the early days back when everything was easier. I walked by the framed quote she loved, "Always come home to love." Felt like a joke now. I reached the front door, opened it, stepped outside. I didn't slam it. I didn't look back. I just closed it behind me. Quiet, clean, final. And in that second, that one breath of silence, I ended a chapter one hadn't even realized was over. I wandered. No real plan. Just feet moving beneath me like they didn't belong to me anymore. The sky had turned that deep navy shade it wears right before night fully settles in, and the streetlights buzzed to life one by one, humming softly like they were trying to fill the quiet I couldn't shake. I didn't think about where I was going. I just needed to be away. Away from that house. Away from her laugh echoing in a place we built together. Away from the wine glass. The key. That stranger in my kitchen who looked at me with the wide eyes of someone who knew he didn't belong. I walked until my legs hurt. Until my shoulder ached from carrying the overnight bag I'd thought I'd be unpacking at home. The strap dug into my skin, but I didn't stop. Couldn't. Every time I slowed down, the image came back. Her on the counter, so comfortable, so alive in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. And the way he stood there, like it wasn't his first time being close to her. Like he knew her space, her rhythms. Played over and over behind my eyes like a movie I couldn't pause. Eventually, I ended up in front of a rundown motel with a flickering vacancy sign. One of those places that probably saw more heartbreak than honeymoon. The guy at the front desk didn't ask for much. Just cash. No ID. No signature. He slid the key across the counter like he was used to handing out shelter for people who didn't want questions. The room was small, old, smelled faintly like stale cigarettes and cleaning products. But it had a bed. And a lamp. And a door I could close behind me. I dropped the bag on the floor and sat down on the edge of the bed, my hands resting on my knees. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I didn't even bother pulling it out. I knew who it was. I knew what she'd say, that it wasn't what it looked like, that she didn't know I'd be home early, that it didn't mean anything. But it did. That was the thing no one wants to admit. It always means something. I stared at the beige carpet for what felt like hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch a wall or throw my phone or do any of the things you see in movies when a man's heart breaks. I just sat there, still letting it sink in, letting the weight of it press down until it settled into the spaces between my ribs. That kitchen was ours. That counter where she sat. We used to eat breakfast there. She used to hum while scrambling eggs, still wearing one of my old t-shirts. We danced in there once, barefoot, while pasta boiled over on the stove. It had been messy and real and good. And now all of it had been overwritten by a single moment. By laughter that didn't belong to us. I laid back on the bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, and let the silence stretch. My phone buzzed again. And again. I ignored it. At some point, sleep found me. Not real sleep, the kind that actually rests you, but the kind that comes from sheer emotional exhaustion. When your body gives up before your brain does. I woke up in the morning feeling heavier, not lighter. My phone was still buzzing. The screen lit up again and again with her name. I didn't open any of the messages. I just stared at her name until it started to look foreign, like it belonged to someone I used to know, someone I used to trust. I tossed the phone on the nightstand and got up to splash water on my face. The mirror in the motel bathroom was cracked in the corner, like someone before me had lost it. I didn't recognize my own face in that glass. Tired eyes, jaw clenched too tight. A man trying to understand how everything he thought he had could disappear in a second. Around noon, I left. I didn't know where else to go, so I drove to my brother's house on the other side of town. We weren't the kind of brothers who called each other every day, but we were the kind that showed up when it counted. When he opened the door and saw me standing there, he didn't say anything at first, just pulled me into a hug. "Spare room's ready," he said, like he'd known I was coming all along. And that was it. I didn't have to explain. He didn't push. He just let me be. That night, I sat on the bed in his guest room and finally opened her messages. I don't know why. Maybe part of me still needed to see it. Needed to confirm that what I saw wasn't some dream, some misinterpreted moment. But the texts didn't help. If anything, they made it worse. "Jason, please, call me. I messed up. I didn't think you'd be home so soon. It didn't mean anything. Please, can we talk? I love you. It's always been you. You mean everything to me." I read them slowly, line by line, letting each one sting. Letting each one stack on top of the other until they all collapsed under the weight of their own contradictions. If it had always been me, I wouldn't have come home to find someone else's presence in our space. If I meant everything to her, she wouldn't have handed a piece of us to someone else so easily. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened the Notes app on my phone and started typing something else. A list, not of things to do, but of things I wouldn't do anymore. I wouldn't beg someone to stay loyal. I wouldn't accept love that came with conditions. I wouldn't let someone else's lack of integrity redefine my own worth. I didn't know what tomorrow was going to look like. I didn't have a 5-step plan to healing, but I had a list of things I wouldn't accept. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like a start. The following days passed like fog, blurry, shapeless, and strangely quiet. I stayed in my brother's guest room, that small square space with the faded blue walls and the twin bed that creaked when you turned over. I'd always thought of it as a leftover room, the kind people fill with things they don't need but can't throw away. Funny how fitting that was. I felt like something left over too. Not broken exactly, just misplaced. Out of context. I didn't do much. Ate whatever was in front of me. Showered out of habit. Slept when exhaustion shut my brain off. I ignored every call and text she sent. By the end of the second day, the notifications were in the dozens. I didn't block her. I wanted the option to see if she'd change her story, if the tone would shift from regret to rage, from apologies to accusations. It never did. The words stayed soft, desperate, familiar in a way that made my stomach turn. "Please, Jason. Please just talk to me. I didn't mean for it to happen. I miss you. I can't sleep. We can fix this. Tell me what to do. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." There was something pathetic about the repetition. Not because she was reaching out, but because none of it came with truth. Not once did she ask how I felt. It was all about her. Her guilt, her fear, her regret. As if saying sorry enough times could erase what I saw. As if the apology would reach back through time and pull his hand away from her thigh. As if my key never landed on the counter like the punctuation mark it was. On the 4th day, she showed up. My brother was in the kitchen when it happened. He peeked into the room and said, "She's outside. That's all. No commentary. Just the facts." I looked out the window and there she was, standing beside her car, holding something in her hands. A bag maybe, or the key, or some symbolic thing she thought would make this easier. I stepped out, barefoot on the porch. The late afternoon sun made her squint, but she didn't look away. Her eyes were swollen like she hadn't slept. Her shoulders slumped like the weight of her choices had finally landed. But I didn't feel sorry. Not anymore. "Jason," she said, her voice cracking in that performative way that used to melt me. I waited. "Can we talk?" she asked. "No." Her jaw twitched. She looked down at the thing in her hands. Turned out it was the key, just like I'd thought. A sad little metaphor in silver and silence. It didn't mean anything, she said. I panicked. I thought you weren't coming home until the weekend and… Until you were done? I said, cutting in. Done pretending I didn't exist? She flinched. Tears spilled over. I don't know what I was thinking. I was lonely. It was a mistake. Terrible one. I don't even care about him. I was feeling disconnected. You don't accidentally invite someone into your home, I said. You don't pour them wine, laugh like that, let them stand that close, not unless you've made a choice. That wasn't a mistake. That was who you are. Her face fell, the tears coming faster now. But I didn't move, didn't comfort, didn't soften. I wasn't cold, just finished. So that's it? She asked, voice thin and shaking. That was it, I said. The moment I walked through that door, it was over. You just didn't know it yet. I turned and walked back inside, closing the door behind me, just like I had the first time. No slamming, no drama, just done. I watched her through the upstairs window, standing there like a statue of grief, hoping the door would open again. Didn't. Eventually, she got in the car and drove away. That night, for the first time since everything collapsed, I actually slept. Not well, not peacefully, but I slept without flinching at every buzz of my phone, without wondering what she was doing, or who she was texting, or whether her apology was sincere. I didn't care. And in the morning I felt it. Lightness. Just a flicker, but it was real. Something had shifted. I called my landlord later that day. Told him I wanted my name off the lease. I didn't want the house anymore. I didn't even want to step inside it again. She could keep it. Keep the couch. Keep the dishes we picked together. Keep the framed photos we hung in the hallway like promises we meant at the time. I wanted none of it. Not because I was being noble. Not because I didn't care. But because I wasn't interested in salvaging pieces of something that had already rotted from the inside out. I started spending more time outside. At the gym. In parks. Driving around aimlessly. I wasn't running away from anything. I just needed space, air, distance. My brother gave me that. He never asked for updates. Never offered advice. Just left a plate out for me at dinner and made sure the spare room stayed quiet. Some nights I sat in there doing nothing but staring at the ceiling. Other nights I journaled. Not to be profound or poetic. Just to put the pain somewhere. I wrote about the counter. The laughter. The key. Her face when she saw me. His when he realized who I was. I wrote it all down. Every detail. Every angle. I let the words carry some of the weight. And slowly they did. I started to understand something I hadn't before. That betrayal doesn't always come with explosions. Sometimes it comes quietly, dressed as normal, speaking in soft tones. Sometimes it looks like the woman you love laughing in your kitchen while someone else stands close enough to kiss her. Sometimes it sounds like a wine glass setting gently on the counter, like nothing is wrong. But everything is wrong. I didn't know what healing was supposed to look like. I still don't. But I knew it wasn't going to come from rereading her messages or letting her twist the story into something small enough to forgive. It was going to come from building something new. Not from her. Not from us. From me. Next part 4000 no headings. Chat GPT. I didn't go back to the house. Not once. Not even to grab my stuff. My brother offered to go with me to help pack, but I shook my head. There was nothing I wanted from that place. Nothing worth pulling out of the ruins. I told her she could have it all, the furniture, the books, the art on the walls. Let it be her museum of regret. I didn't need physical reminders of what she'd done. The memory alone had already taken up enough space in my chest. The first few days after cutting her off completely were quiet, but not in the peaceful way people imagine. It was the kind of quiet that made your thoughts echo. The kind that magnifies the smallest doubts until they loom like shadows. I started questioning everything. Not just her actions, but mine too. How long had things been broken? What signs had I missed? Had I been too distracted, too trusting, too willing to believe we were okay because I wanted it to be true? I played back conversations in my head like reruns of a show I never realized was full of clues. The way she'd started pulling away, laughing less. The way she'd flinch when I reached for her hand sometimes. Or how she'd go quiet when I asked how her day was. I had called it stress, burnout, life. But maybe it had been something else. Maybe she had already decided something long before I walked in on it. Maybe that moment in the kitchen wasn't the beginning of the end. Maybe it was just the moment I finally saw it. And still, despite all the anger, I never let myself hate her. Couldn't. Hate was too close to love, and I didn't want anything close to that anymore. I wanted space. I wanted clarity. I wanted to rebuild without dragging her shadow into everything new. So I started small. I found a new apartment. Nothing special, one bedroom, tiny kitchen, windows that creaked when the wind blew. But it was mine. No shared drawers. No ghost of her perfume in the closet. Just blank walls and clean floors and space to breathe. I moved in with nothing but a duffel bag and a borrowed air mattress. It should have felt like rock bottom, but it didn't. It felt like possibility. Like I'd cleared the rubble and now had room to grow something better. I slept that first night on the floor, surrounded by boxes and silence, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. The quiet didn't scare me anymore. Felt honest. I spent the next week setting things up one piece at a time. Bought a second-hand couch off a guy who smoked too much but gave me a good deal. Picked out a table from a thrift shop, scratched and worn but solid. Bought dishes that didn't match the old ones. They were mine and that was enough. I stopped checking my phone so often. The texts from her eventually stopped coming, though I kept expecting them to start again. I knew how people like her operated, how they confuse silence with weakness, how they think a little time and space will soften your spine. But I wasn't softening. I was solidifying. Every day that passed without her was another day I remembered who I was before everything revolved around keeping the peace in a home that wasn't honest. I started running again. Not to get fit or burn energy, but because it helped quiet my head. The first few runs were brutal. My legs ached. My lungs burned, and my mind wouldn't shut up. But by the end of the week, I started looking forward to it. Something about pounding the pavement with music in my ears gave me rhythm again. It gave me control. One evening, I passed by the park we used to go to in the summer. There was a bench under a tree where we'd sit with iced coffee and talk about everything and nothing. I hadn't been back since we split. That day, I stopped. Just stood there, watching people walk by. Kids chasing dogs, couples laughing, someone sketching in a notebook. Life moved on. I looked at that bench and felt nothing. No longing, no sting, just neutrality. That surprised me. I thought I'd feel grief or maybe bitterness, but all I felt was distance. It wasn't our bench anymore. It was just a bench, a spot in a park where two people once sat. And now I was just one person standing alone, and that was okay. A few days later, I got an email from her. No subject line, just her name in the sender box. My stomach tightened. I hovered over it for a minute, debating whether to open it or just delete it without a second thought. Curiosity won. The message was short, not dramatic, no begging. I know you won't answer my texts. I get it. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not because I want something, just because you didn't deserve that. I've been thinking a lot, and I hope you're okay. That's all. I read it twice, then a third time, and then I closed it. I didn't reply. It didn't matter if she meant it. It didn't matter if it was genuine. An apology doesn't glue trust back together. It doesn't erase the feeling of being replaced. It doesn't change the fact that I had to find out the truth by walking into it like a wall. And it certainly didn't change what I'd learned since. I deleted the email. Not in anger, just in peace. That weekend, I met up with an old friend. Someone I hadn't seen in years. Someone who'd moved to a different state for a while and just happened to be back in town. We got coffee. Sat in the corner of a small shop I hadn't been to since before I met her. We talked about work, about life, about the dumb stuff you only share with people who once knew a different version of you. Eventually, he asked, "So what happened with Brooke?" I paused, took a sip of my coffee and said, "Walked in early from a trip, heard voices, saw something I couldn't unsee, left." He didn't push. just nodded slowly. You did the right thing. And I believed him. Because for once, I wasn't telling the story like it was mine to be ashamed of. I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't flinching. I was just stating facts. And that meant something. That meant I was healing. The days started blending together, but not in a way that felt empty. More like routine finally felt natural again. I stopped counting how long it had been since I walked out of that house. I stopped marking time by the distance from her. Instead, I started tracking progress by moments that belonged to me. The mornings I woke up without heaviness. The nights I slept without thoughts of what she was doing, who she was with. The meals I cooked for myself without imagining what she'd think of them. The slow, steady return to a version of myself that didn't revolve around anyone else's mood or needs or secrets. I got a real bed, picked it out myself, set it up in the middle of the room, no help, no compromises. I chose the softest sheets I could find and laid there that first night just breathing. No air mattress, no boxes around me, no weight of heartbreak humming beneath my ribs. Just quiet, honest, earned quiet. And in that quiet, I started understanding things I hadn't before. Forgiveness wasn't letting her back in. It wasn't even about her. It was about letting go of the version of myself that needed her to make sense of what happened. I didn't need closure from her. I didn't need her to explain. I had seen everything I needed to see. The rest was just noise. And I had no space left for noise. I kept journaling. Not every night, but when the thoughts got too loud. Some entries were half-formed sentences. Others were just questions. What did I miss? What does healing even look like? Who am I without that relationship? And over time, those questions turned into declarations. I am someone who walks away when respect is gone. I am someone who doesn't beg to be chosen. I am someone who can start over without burning down everything behind me. It wasn't easy. Some days the grief hit out of nowhere. A smell, a song, a couple holding hands in a grocery store. But grief became something I welcomed instead of feared. Because it meant I was still capable of feeling deeply. It meant I hadn't gone numb. And that mattered more than pretending to be fine. I redecorated slowly. I added a record player to the corner of the living room. Bought plants I wasn't sure I'd remember to water. Hung art that didn't match but made me feel something. I let the space become mine, one item at a time. There was no rush. I had time. I had space. I had breath again. One morning, I stepped out onto the balcony with my coffee, just as the sun crept over the rooftops. The little tree I planted was still standing, still growing, stubborn and green against the gray concrete. I watched it for a while and thought, this is what rebuilding looks like. Not grand gestures, not dramatic comebacks, just slow, consistent care. Choosing yourself in small ways until it becomes your default. She never showed up again. No more emails. No unexpected knocks at the door. I think maybe she finally understood that I meant it. That I wasn't coming back. That no explanation or apology could rebuild what she'd chosen to destroy. Sometimes I imagined what I'd say if I ever saw her again. Not out of bitterness, just curiosity. But every time I played out the scenario in my head, the only words that ever came were, I hope you're okay. And even those felt more like a goodbye than a greeting. I started saying yes to things I would have avoided before. Invitations from friends I hadn't seen in months. A trip out of town. A writing workshop. Things that made me feel more like myself than I had in years. I stopped living on standby. Stopped waiting for someone else to set the tempo of my life. I chose what mattered to me. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when you stop chasing the version of love that hurt you. When you stop rewriting the past to make it feel more survivable. I didn't need to vilify her to move on. I didn't need to be the victim in every retelling. The truth was simple. She made a choice. I made one too. And mine was to walk away with my dignity intact. I ran into someone new recently. We talked for hours, nothing intense, nothing heavy. Just two people sharing time without pretending or performing. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guarded. I didn't feel the need to scan her words for hidden meanings or brace myself for disappointment. I just listened, laughed, existed. I don't know what will come of it. Maybe nothing. Maybe something. But that's not what matters. What matters is that I didn't feel like I was bleeding on someone who didn't cut me. What matters is that I felt ready. Not because I had forced myself to be, but because I had allowed myself to heal. People say time heals everything, but I don't think that's true. I think it's what you do with the time, how you use the silence, whether you sit in the wreckage or start sweeping up. I spent too long thinking healing would arrive like a thunderclap, but it came in the form of quiet mornings and steady steps, of choosing better without needing revenge, of understanding that some endings aren't about punishment, they're about freedom. I'm not the same person who walked through that door and found the life he thought he had crumbling in front of him. I'm not the man who left a key on the counter and walked away because he had no choice. I'm the man who stayed gone because he finally realized he deserved better. I didn't just survive the betrayal. I used it. I let it shape me, not into something bitter, but into someone unshakable. If you've ever stood in the middle of a moment that made your heart drop to your stomach, if you've ever heard laughter that wasn't meant for you, in a place that once felt like home, just know this. You're not broken. You're waking up, and what comes next might hurt, but it's also going to set you free. And freedom, once you've had a taste of it, is something you never let go of again.